Welcome to another Keelhauled podcast. I'm your host, CaptainLogun, and we've got a lot of Sea of Thieves news to cover today. So tie yourselves to the mast and hold fast. Ahoy there, pirates. I hope you had yourselves a good week and a good weekend. I know I did. This week, we're going to be talking all about the community direct that just came out this last week for the update for Sea of Thieves from the last 6 months and what is going to be happening in the future of Sea of Thieves for the next 6 months. All that and more in this week's episode of Keelhauled Podcast. But before we get into any of that, I have to thank the patrons. They're the ones that went over to patreon.com/Keelhauled Podcast to support this content. And as I like to call out every once in a while, we do have folks that stop supporting for their own reasons. And I want to let you guys know that I understand. And I'm never going to be upset about that because it is just for fun. This is just to help support the podcast and take care of the bills. So never feel bad if you ever have to stop supporting. It's always appreciated, but it's never required. And I think this month we Sea Like Sam reached out and left me a very nice message letting me know that they're going to have to cancel theirs, as well as Kylia the aficionado. So I understand. I totally get it. The Patreon is to help support the podcast bills, because it's stuff like me supporting other content creators where I'm trying to put money into other pockets as well too. So we're all just kind of circling money digitally. It's very weird, and it sounds like a Ponzi scheme now that I'm talking about that in a way, but I don't know. It's one of those things. I try not to worry about it if folks are having to discontinue support, because I want you to take care of you first. I'm a second thought, and that's how I prefer to look at this. So shout out to them for the years and months of support that they have been providing. I very much appreciate it. And I still appreciate everyone that is actually that is still active, or even if you're a free member. I see folks come in that jump on as the free tier, and I'm always surprised because there's really not a whole lot that's on the Patreon that's under the free tier. Some people, I guess, are using it to kind of like just follow, but I don't know. I'm not going to question it, but I will question why I haven't jumped into actually thanking the people that are supporting. So as always, call out the names of the folks that are supporting and let them know that I appreciate it. And hopefully Fern will let me get through. Nope, never mind. I said her name. Dang it. Son of a gun. And that's what happens. But thank you to A-Chick, L-Cute, Balls, Blue Turtle V1, Captain Chonky, Chateau Neuf, Super Pack, Zombie Killer, Cosmic Johnson, Static Mirror, Crazy Frog, Davram TV, El Jefe Esteban, Godhammer 6, who is over on in the UK visiting Rainbow Sam right now, which is kind of awesome. Jeff H, Carl Embo of Embo Family Gaming, Kylia the aficionado, Elvin Vramir, Evil Morpheus, Space Admiral Oars, Xbox Mike 29, Rabid Raccoon, Blue Crab, Reap's Revenge, Regis Stella the Brony Pirate, Ribloid, Rustbelt Kid, Shoe Daddy 13, Skamelt 666, Tales of the Sea, The Demon Jester, Tommy D, TN Professor, Wailing Witch, Wild Hog Murph, Big Bad Pad, Mina Fairy, Hager Owl, Captain Duckweed, Evil Martha, Peter Miller, Rooski Doo, Thor Von Blitz, Luke Lord the Insipid Ghost, and Zam. Wow. Thank you all so much for your love, for your support. And again, as always, it is appreciated. It is not required. Please take care of yourself first. That is more important to me. With that, pirates, let's get into it. First on today's docket, let's talk about the Community Direct. Now, these happen every 6 months and generally are designed to give us an insight on what's going to happen with Sea of Thieves for the next 6 months. The next one is due out, probably going to be in July, and I would imagine it's probably going to talk a bit about the SOT Fest that's going to happen there. But hopefully we will hear kind of more what's going to be happening with Sea of Thieves and how things have been going with Season 19, Season 20, and then the upcoming Season 21. With the cast of devs that were here, I will just say, very nice to see that they got some pillows. They got some pillows for that massive couch, and they all looked a lot more comfortable sitting in it this time around. So very happy about that. But Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what was in this and what you can expect and how this is going to affect Sea of Thieves over the next 6 months. I'm going to say I'm still kind of unsure how I feel about this overall, as I do think that there were definitely things that were not addressed in this that we were kind of told like we should be hearing more about it. And while I'll say that they did answer some of those questions, it wasn't like blatant. They weren't just kind of saying like, this is how it's going to be. They just kind of talked around it in a little bit. But it's clear that they've made some changes in their process, and they're going forward. They're going to be doing things different. The things that they decided to focus on in this community direct, especially with regard to season 20, it's interesting. So let's get into it. So the beginning of the podcast, they kind of went into what I'll kind of say is their way of addressing the fact that the state of the game is not where they want it to be. They kind of go back and reflect about what they talked about in the last podcast, as well as the last community direct, about how they were going to set up the seasons to be in these 3-act structures to allow for us to be able to have something new every single month. And while that is good on paper, we have seen them try to do this in the past, just not necessarily in the season model. But we have seen them do this in the past, and that was a strain on the development team. One of the interesting aspects of that was that the strain that was being put on those teams was when they had more teams dedicated to the actual season. Now, they've said and been able to confirm that there is just one team currently working on seasons. That does not say how big that team is. That team could be the size of what initially were the size of maybe 1 or 2 or 3 teams. We don't necessarily know. And to assume that one team isn't enough to be able to do the content is safe, because obviously they are changing the way that this cadence works. It's hard to know how many people are actively working on seasonal development. They have talked a little bit about the type of teams that they do have going into this, which I thought was interesting. And this is some of the information that was actually in the last community direct as well. But they wanted to kind of talk about the fact that they have multiple teams, and the main team that is working on seasons is going to be working on them alongside the live service team, which is currently working on building out events like the Build Rat Weekender, the Last Ship Standing, Fort of Fortune type of stuff, just the general types of things that we've seen so far for live services. They want to work with them to kind of build out a schedule that will happen every single month for Sea of Thieves. Now, they're going to, from what I can tell, effectively get rid of the act seasonal structure. What will happen will probably just be something that is akin to what we see with other games, where every month there's a number of rotating things that come and go that you will be engaging with for different cosmetics. And the cosmetics aren't something that are going to be tied directly to what you do in the actual event, but they will be ways for you to purchase things. And in this case, it's going to be with the balloons through Duke, the Dark Lord, who is going to have a rotating stock, which, based on feedback from the insiders, is going to be lingering a little bit longer than it was initially. And that Duke will be sticking around a little bit initially, because at least in insiders, they were kind of suggesting that he was only going to stick around for a short period of time and offer cosmetics that were only going to be available during that period until they came back into a rotation, which feels very FOMO, which is something else that they addressed in this community direct. The acknowledgement that players are sick of FOMO, fear of missing out on stuff, especially with timed events, was made apparent. And they are already looking to try and take that into account when developing stuff with the Build Rat Weekenders, which I still have issues with the naming convention, because it's intended to be a month-long thing, but it's called a Weekender, which is just the weekend you go do something for. I don't know, but it was interesting to kind of hear that, for all intents and purposes, they have a team that is working on toxicity, They have a team that is working on security. They have a game health team that is called the Captains of Adventure, which are going to be focusing on the the longevity of the game per se. Like, what are things that they need to kind of go and address over time. So it'll be very interesting to kind of see how those work and if it's going to benefit us in the long term. But they're going to be looking at seeing how they can ensure that they want people to be able to have a rich sandbox that will continuously be brought in with new tools, or at least kept things interesting, and that the sandbox doesn't get boring, or that the tools don't get old, that they kind of keep things fresh. So it was nice to kind of hear that. One of the early things that they talked about in the direct as well were some of the wins that they've had, because acknowledging that they're doing everything or the things that they're doing aren't necessarily positive. They did want to call out some of the things that they have done with the game that have kind of flown under the radar because of some of the other issues that they've had, which is obviously production cadence. So the weapon switching, the cross-region matchmaking, and then the improvements to how often you come across other ships on the sea were things that they wanted to call out and say, hey, these are things that we've worked on. These are things that we've done, and they were positive for the community, but they aren't being kind of sung because right now everyone's focusing on the squeaky wheel, which is we're tired of hearing delays, cut content because of scope, and buggy implementations of content when it does actually show up. And this is something that they've talked about in the last community direct. It's something that they've addressed and said, hey, we understand that we missed the mark. They've been saying we haven't missed the mark so much that I'm pretty sure that's actually the name of the new podcast that they're doing, but I can't be sure until I actually see the first episode of it. That being said, it would be hilarious if they actually sold a t-shirt that was a pirate holding what is it called? The target board. I don't know what you call those. But it would be interesting to see them like standing in front of the weapon shop holding one of those and a bunch of daggers stuck in the wall of the building behind the pirate who's holding it, and just a big banner of text above it that says we missed the mark, and just sell that. I might even do that. I might actually see if I do that, because they did just announce like what the content creator kind of regulations are, or like allowances are for content. So I may actually be, I'll see if I can get a photo and then maybe do some Photoshop and then just put "we missed the mark" and then put it as a t-shirt and put that up on the shop. If I have the wherewithal to do that. And of course the dedication to the idea, that's always the biggest trouble. You can have plenty of ideas, but if you actually follow through with them, that's a completely different thing. Big failing for a lot of artists out there. But overall, what I will say is, as far as game health goes, there's going to be tons of bugs. There's lots of bugs. And I think a lot of us are kind of tired of hearing about the bugs, but we know that that's going to be something that they have to address, because to not address that is kind of like leaving the elephant in the room, which we'll get into a little bit later. There's obviously an elephant in the room. Looking at game health, I'm glad that they addressed the things that we effectively have like been happy with, but did definitely forget about. And just kind of letting us know like, hey, they are looking to take our feedback based on how things are going, and especially in the sense of the surveys. The surveys, analytics drive a lot when it comes to companies, and the surveys that everyone have been putting out had really kind of let them know like, hey, a lot of people do things in the game and a lot of other people consider that toxic, whereas that isn't necessarily toxic. It's rude, but it's not toxic. So they're taking that to heart, and they are looking to see if they can then implement ways to try and, what's a good way to put this? To try and educate the community on what they consider toxic, so that if reports get put in for people being toxic, it's not for something like throwing loot over the ship or the side of the ship, like dropping loot in the water. Not toxic, very rude. Just to be clear on that, which I agree. I don't think that that's toxic. I think toxic behavior would be attacking people based on the who they are, just in general. I think using things in the game to prevent players from being able to have like an escape, which is, it's tough to kind of say, like, but you know, if you're locking a ship down and you're bucketing them and not allowing them to sink, you are kind of negating the point of the game, which is to take everything from someone. But if you're forcing them to kind of stalemate in a situation like that, and you're not looking to try and allow them to continue going on, and that's impeding their sense of like actually playing, it's a bit of a gray area. I'm not going to go into details. Everyone's going to have a different opinion about it, but I'm going to say, if you're preventing someone from sinking, then you're doing more harm than good. And all you're doing is being selfish about that, because you could easily sink them if you want the supplies. That's why they put the barrels up afterwards. All you're doing is tormenting someone. And that is, it's like cornering a kid in a back alley just to threaten to beat them up, without actually beating them up, and just making them eternally like terrified of that situation. So that's one of those situations where that is just, in a sense, it's just bullying from my perspective. But again, it's my perspective, and everyone's going to have their own perspective and their own experiences that are going to define what they consider something like that to be like bullying or not. And everyone's free to believe whatever they want. They can disagree if they want. I'm not going to tell you what you should think, and I'm not going to tell you what if your opinion is going to change my opinion. But what I will say is that it is on Rare to educate the community on what they consider a bannable offense. And I think that that is something that really needs to be cut and dry, so that players have a much better understanding of what is considered toxic to Rare, so that when that happens, they can feel that effectively reporting that person is going to be an actionable ban. So that way we are educating the community who are doing stuff like that, that is not something that is deemed acceptable in this game, and that you should not be doing it. And I think that is a fair ask. And I think it's fair for them to say, there are things that the community considers toxic that are not actually toxic. There are things that the community considers toxic that need to be acted upon, that the devs are not necessarily acting upon as well too. So they'd come out last community direct and kind of said, hey, we're going to be a lot more lenient. And they brought up the example of, say, like a 15-year-old doing something to get themselves banned 7 years later. They're a different type of person, have different awareness of their actions, and might want to have a chance to come back to Sea of Thieves. Understandable from that perspective, but at the same time, there's a lesson to be learned. I think if you're going to get punished, if you lose access to something and that's because of what you did, that's a good lesson to learn. I don't think that that's a bad lesson. I think losing access to something because you did something that was against terms of service that you didn't think was bad, but everyone else told you it was bad, and you still continued to do it to the point where it happened over and over and over again, and you earned a ban as a result of that, I think is a valuable lesson. I think backing off on that, it's again a gray area, which I think is why they are going more with the Microsoft point-based system for these types of reprimands, so that it's actionable to a degree. But again, it comes back to these surveys kind of showcasing that there is a broad sense of what things like the word toxicity include from a community perspective. So one of the other things that I liked about this was that they addressed, for me especially, I think one of the things that I thought was really, really nice about this, the Emporium. This is something that every time we get a patch note, I like to go over the patch notes, and I like to tell you not only what's coming to the Emporium, but also what's coming to the Gold Shop. And to be perfectly frank, for I would say maybe the last 6 to 9 months, because they do the updates every month, it has been very lackluster. It has been very boring, very one note, and not inspired in any way whatsoever. When they have recolors of the Resolute ship set that they continue to pump out with just a different symbol and maybe a little bit different iconography on the actual livery set in general, that to me is phoning it in. That is not of the same caliber that I would expect if I was to actually compare what shows up in game compared to what shows up in the Emporium. One thing I want to stop and actually address right now. Do I think that the Emporium content should get less stuff in it so that they can have more stuff go to the store? No. I think it is absolutely fair for them to, or for me as a consumer, to let them continue to put whatever they want in the Emporium. All I'm asking for is a little more balance when it comes to the in-game shops. I think that the cosmetics that they're bringing in there should not just be recolors of the same cosmetic ship that they've had for the last year. I also don't think that just bringing out recolors or colors from the arena ship teams that for a mode that they killed back in like 2021 or something is a good way to really kind of remember arena. I know a lot of legendary Sea Dogs out there are probably upset that people are getting access to like the good boy set when all they have to do is fish up a boot and bring it up to someone else. I also know a lot of arena lovers out there that are happy that they're finally getting some colored cosmetics for the team that they love to have in arena, or that the arena has some life left in it in the form of cosmetics. We'll get a little bit into that later on when we talk about custom Cs. So hopefully I remember to actually talk about that. I've got it in my notes. I just don't want to forget that I know that I referenced it right now. But I'm glad. I'm actually glad. The community direct said, hey, we see that you guys think that there is a disparity, and they can say that we think that, but that is actually the thing. That is fully a fact. It's not a perception. It is fact. The cosmetics that are coming to Emporium are far more elaborate than the content that is currently coming to the outpost shops. So that is changing, and they said that is changing very soon. I'm glad to hear that, because it would be nice to actually have some of that stuff actually come to the in-game shops. And how they're doing that, I think, is something that I'll touch on this a little bit later. Actually, I'm going to go right now into my notes and add, because I think they are doing the cosmetics from this in the shops. Okay, hopefully I'll read that as I get later on and remember that I was talking about the disparity between what's brought into the shops versus what's brought into the Emporium. Because I think they're cheating a little bit here. I'm not going to lie. I think they're cheating. So are they them doing this? Fantastic. Very big win. I'm glad. Bring more cosmetics to the shops. How they're doing that, I think, is a little bit shady, but you know what? We'll get into it. I'll get into why I think that's shady in a little bit. First, I want to get into the actual Emporium changes. So we're talking about all the cosmetics because, that's what's important in Sea of Thieves. The Emporium is getting changes. They talked about how there are 70 individual pages roughly that have been in there, and that from their feedback that they've heard, it is a terrible experience to shop in the Emporium. This is, I'm not going to lie, it is definitely kind of hard to find something if you're looking for something, or if you're just browsing, it's a lot of pages to go through. So what they're doing is they're going to, in season 20, change how this works. They're going to be offering the rotation of cosmetics in the Emporium. So it's not going to be everything all at once. They're going to cycle some stuff out, and they're going to spotlight the stuff that's left in a way to kind of try and like showcase content that may have been in the game for a while that hasn't had very much spotlight, because they're always pushing forward with the new cosmetic sets, leaving stuff that has been in the game for a while in the Emporium destitute, alone, shoved off. Middle child did. Is that a verb? I'm making it a verb. And I understand the perception. I understand the reasoning behind it. It's not something that I like, but I also don't like what the community has been out there saying they should do either. Because everywhere I look, it seems on social media, the answer is add a search bar. And I'm like, okay, you could add a search bar, but hi, I don't know the names of all the ship types in the Emporium. And I was just looking for cowboy ship, and cowboy ship does not actually result in cowboy ship. it just results in nothing found because nothing is called Cowboy Ship. Now, sure, you could go in, you could flag a bunch of stuff to have certain titles or like back end tags to kind of say, like, if somebody searches for Cowboy, make sure you bring up the Dusty Roads ship livery set along with the Gambler one as well too. Bring that up too. You could do that. Yes, that is an option, but everyone's going to search for something in a different way, and not everyone speaks English. So that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work for something that may not actually get people the thing that they want, which is cosmetics that look like the theme that they want. So the best way to go about that is just to either leave everything and cordon off things the way they've currently got it, where they're all based on like captaincy ship stuff. Like they've got stuff for your pirates, they've got stuff for your pets, and you just let people browse as much as they can until they find something that maybe they like, and then they go for it. The alternative there is, instead of having everything there all at once, you pick out a subset of stuff that rotates on a monthly cycle. And you say, hey, this month we're going to put this in the Emporium and it's going to look like this. Or every 2 weeks, they're going to put this in the Emporium. Or every week, they're going to have this in the Emporium. And then after a week, it cycles out and something else cycles back in. And every month, there's something new that's getting put in there. And then for that week, that stuff is going to be Spotlight. And as long as the messaging on this is clear that this is not going away forever, that it is just going away for now, I think you're okay with that. Because it's just like how they do it with Fortnite. Destiny 2 does it as well. Actually, do they? They do some stuff. Yeah, some stuff is cycled in, some stuff is cycled out. There is some stuff that just sticks around forever. But a lot of games as service tend to do this, where there is stuff that's in the store and you can buy it and it's going to be made available to purchase during a certain period of time, and then it will cycle out, and then eventually it will cycle back in, and you just have to keep checking the store to see when that happens. Is that the method that I would prefer? No. Am I the one that's looking to try and make money off of it? No. So at that point, I understand where they're coming from. The Emporium is what keeps the lights on at Rare. It's what keeps the development going for Sea of Thieves, because if it didn't and it wasn't making money, Daddy Microsoft is going to look down and be like, hey, this isn't working out and you guys don't have Everwild to fall back on. So we're going to need to do something about this. Okay. You're going to need to get a new job. And they're going to be like, new job? How long we have? And they're like, not as much time as you want. And that's going to be rough, because if it's one thing that I've learned over the years of covering game news, both either on my own podcasts or working with Luke for Expansion Pass, there's a lot of layoffs. There's a lot of layoffs, and Rare is not immune to that. In fact, they had layoffs last June before the community direct. And what I will say is I would rather Rare stick around and continue to, like plug stuff in the Pirate Emporium than them closing. That's being perfectly honest. What I need from Rare is the acknowledgement that the current state of the game is good, not great, and should probably get closer to great before I really start throwing money back at that store. And that's just the personal preference here. Love Rare, love the people that are there. Need the game to be a little bit in a better state before I start putting money back into that Emporium outside of the season pass. I will buy the season pass every time, because I love the cosmetics that are actually coming into there. So that is that takes me actually to the season pass changes. And believe it or not, I'm actually still going to come back around to the cosmetics conversation about the in-game shops. The other thing that they talked about in this update were the changes that were going to be coming to the season pass. And this is, I think, at the point where I kind of realized, given that this was a 30-minute community direct, we weren't going to be talking about what I thought we were going to be talking about. There was a lot of focus on what they had done well. There was a lot of focus on surveys. There was a lot of focus on game health and changes to the Emporium And then as soon as they started talking about changes to the season pass, I was like, oh boy, okay, this is a systems update. This is them working on UI functionality. This is their focus, and this is going to be the focus for the next 3 months after season 19. We are not getting story. There's not going to be story that's coming. Now, is that something that I'm okay with? For the time being, I'm going to say yes. And the reason for that is because I still think Rare has plans in store to do stuff with Sea of Thieves that is going to be cool, or at least interesting. And to speak to that, I will point back to the beginning of season 18, or in the middle of season 18, when we started to get word in insiders that they were going to be redoing the Kraken, and that the Kraken was going to be a different type of encounter that was going to be a little more interesting, and try and take in player feedback about what the Kraken encounter should look like. Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you right now, I want the Kraken to emulate what it looks like in Skull and Bones, because the Skull and Bones encounter with the Kraken is frightening and imposing. And the Kraken that we have in Sea of Thieves is kind of like dealing with a chihuahua, an angry chihuahua at that. And you're just kind of trying to shake your leg at the Kraken who's attacking your ship, because it's just like there, and you don't really want to engage with it because you're probably not in a position where you're looking to actually engage with it. Whereas if you're going for if you're going to hunt down ancient megalodons, you get to grade 5 on Hunter's Call, and then you sail to one of those megalodons and you prep for it. You don't prep for the Kraken, and most people don't care about that. And it's not because the Kraken isn't a cool creature. It is a cool creature. It's a really awesome mythological creature. You see it in pirate history, or not pirate history, but in pirate like mythology in films and stuff all the time. You know, there's Jules Verne talking about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea with the giant Kraken-esque squid thing that happens to the submarine. You know, you see it in Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, and you know, you have it in games like Skull and Bones. You have in other games that are like, I don't want to bring up Atlas, but if you guys ever remember Atlas, that are just, it's cool to kind of have, you know. In Sea of Thieves, it was the first creature that we ever had outside of like sharks and snakes. But honestly, those two things were far more imposing than the Kraken at the time. But the Kraken was all we had. And I've always kind of felt like, hey, this is something that I would love to see come back to the game. That, along with the potential of an orb that grows in value the more you do things on a server, and the more you leave it on your ship, the more you go and do stuff with it on your ship, the more value you have to it. That is going to be interesting if that ever comes to fruition. But again, we have to get there. And the reason I'm bringing this up, to get back to the point here, is that when I saw that we were talking about changes to the season pass, I knew that the stuff that they had taken from season 19 and put up on the shelf, and they said, we can't right now. We can't. There are a lot of things happening with the game, and we just can't with this. We'll focus on it. We'll get back to it. It's still there, and there's still a lot that they have to do. There's a lot of stuff that they want to do. And we know that because we've seen the orb streams from December. They have a plan in place. The problem is execution. The problem is time. That is something that money can only solve part of. You can solve time if you give your consumer base enough heads up that you want to do this. It will require this amount of time and this amount of trust. You can get that time if you tell us about when you want to ship that content. You can get the trust by bringing out content beforehand that is predictable, that is safe, that is sturdy, it is solid. You don't have to question it. It's not having weird interactions, and you don't have stuff like broken encounters on something like the Garys. That is something that you can earn up to that point, but you have to be diligent. And that is tough as a studio. That is tough just in development and period, right? So I understand that what they're doing right now is not easy. And it's very, very hard to get people to trust you again after you have hurt that trust. So when I see that Rare started talking about season pass changes, I realized that they were going in for long haul updates to their systems. Do I think this was the focus that it should have been? No. I think they should have catered to the story. I think they should have catered to the content release. And they should have said, we will do a podcast that will address the changes to Emporium, the changes to the season pass, and the inclusion of more rewards in the in-game shops later on. I think it was out of touch or not aware of what the community's intent for this community direct to be focused on was, but I still stand by that a lot of stuff that they talked about are wins for the community. And I'm glad that they did this to at least say, like, we know that these are things that you guys talked about X months ago. You guys have been talking about how bad the Emporium is for a long time. You guys have been talking about how easy Renown is in the season pass and how the season pass just flies by and you don't really care or notice what's going on with content that's in there. And the content that's in the Renown pass is good. It's exceptionally well made. I really love the content that they put into the Renown pass, especially the free tier. The free tier is really, really good. And it's very easy to earn because generally it is not hard to get through the season pass. I have not played a whole lot of season 19. Big surprise, Hourglass updates. Logan's not invested, but I am still fairly decent along, and it's barely within the first month of the season. And I have no question that I'm going to finish out the rest of the season pass this month or next month. That is easy to think about. So I see why they are going about doing these season pass changes, why they're doing changes to the Emporium. They're trying to make it easier for people to find stuff that's cool for a short amount of time to buy it, to ensure that people are investing in the game and that the game can continue to have production value so that they can continue making the game. Along with that, they are going to be putting more stuff in the Outpost shops. Cool. Where's that stuff coming from? Well, that's the kicker, because it's going to be the season pass. Looking at the community direct and watching them talk about what they plan to do with the in-game shop, or not the in-game shop, but the Outpost shops, and seeing them say that there's going to be more coming to those shops and that it's going to be because of changes that are coming in the future. I can already tell you right now that the cool stuff that's in the season pass right now for season 19, if this was the new season system that they're going to be implementing for season 20, not much of that is going to be in that season pass. And I guarantee you that they're not going to stop making that kind of cosmetics, but that those cosmetics are going to be brought to the Outpost shops. So the really cool cosmetics that you're getting right now, all of that stuff in season 19, just expect whatever was coming to season 20 to be put in the shops. Because looking at the way that they're doing the season pass, they are taking out 50 levels and they're doing 10 sets of 5. So each different block of the season pass for season 20 will have 5 things. Those 5 things could be doubloons, they could be ancient coins, they could be voyages, they could be cosmetics, they could be cosmetics that are only earned because you have the plunder pass. Those things are locked away because you have to buy the plunder pass, which effectively leaves maybe 3 items in each tier that are earnable things. And those earnable things may be something that is from the Emporium. They may be something that is from the cosmetics that they're creating specifically for that season. They could just be doubloons, could be currency, could be a voyage. And we don't really know necessarily what these voyages are going to be. They may be something that actually awards a cosmetic as well, too. That's been hinted out as well. But we're going from 100 levels to effectively 50 rewards. And those rewards are not all cosmetic. So if you have a team that is doing really well at currently supplying the content for the season pass, and you redesign the season pass to get rid of the necessity for a lot of those cosmetics, well, you then get to address the fact that the community perceives an imbalance of Emporium content, which is the season, compared to what's in the shops. And it's very easy for you to take the cosmetics that are from the season renown and put those into the shops that you can purchase for gold. So instead of earning them through the free track of the season pass, now you got to spend gold to buy them. That's my expectation, because that's what I'm being presented with. They haven't been explicit about that. They haven't outright said we're moving cosmetics from the season pass to the in-game shops to be able to buy with gold. That way, there's a better balance of cosmetics that are coming to the in-game shop compared to the Emporium. I don't think that is what I would prefer to have happen. I actually like the way that the season pass works now. I just think it's a little easy because when I'm flying through the levels, there's a clear misrepresentation of how much renown you should be earning each session. And I think they could have addressed the design aspect of that by increasing the amount of renown that is required to be earned between each tier or each level, then cutting that out and then changing how renown is earned, especially when it doesn't look like there's going to be a free or paid tier on this new season. It looks like you will have the same season pass or the same season system that everyone else has. And there's going to be the Call of Duty design here where they're basically saying, if you want to get through the season pass faster, then you're not going to be buying a paid tier or a paid level of the pass. Instead, you're going to buy a booster, and that booster is going to increase your experience earned for renown to get you through those 50 levels faster. Now, as someone who has Sea of Thieves still as like a main game outside of like World of Warcraft and Heroes of the Storm, I will be interested to see how long it takes to get through the season pass with this current design. And this is something that I think Rare should really hold off on when it comes to the boost. And the reason I'm saying that is because if you add a boost to a new season pass and you misjudge the amount of renown it takes to get from 1 to 50, then it is going to look like you are artificially or arbitrarily designing the season pass to be so hard that it is only achievable with a boost. So they can't mess that up. So in other words, I'm fine with them changing this because I understand they're looking to try and cut corners effectively. They want to cut corners, not only just by reducing the amount of tiers available in a season pass, but so they can then increase the amount of renown to get through those tiers to elongate the lifespan of a season pass, and then take the cosmetics from that to then put in the outpost shops to then bolster the amount of perceived items that are going from or going to the shops and to the Emporium each month. But I really hope that they don't add the boosters in at launch of season 20, because I think that the data that they get back from players playing the game, seeing the time logged, seeing the effort put in, and how fast it takes them to get to the completion of the season is something that you can't mess up. If it's too easy, you can always increase that. If it's too hard, you can always lower that. But if you make it too hard and people feel like they have to buy the booster, that is not going to be good consumer perception. So I will say, please err on the side of not implementing it, it being too easy in some cases, and that you don't go so hard on this that people feel like they have to buy a booster. That would be very annoying for, I think, a lot of people who play the game naturally on a regular cadence as casual fans of the game. Should not have a problem completing it within the 3-month time span of the game. If I come in at the end of the month on the 3rd month and I'm only a quarter into the season pass and I'm sitting here looking at all those cosmetics and thinking I gotta grind, I don't look at that and think I'm going to be able to get all this and only play the same amount that I've been playing in a while. I'm going to realize, oops, I didn't play enough. I guess I should invest a little more time into playing that if I want to earn all of these things. I don't go into Fortnite a month before the end of the season pass and then get upset because it's too hard to complete and I'm not going to get all the rewards. It was easy to complete if I started 2 months ago. So there's ways to kind of go around this, right? But I'm very interested to kind of see how they plan on doing a lot of this. It also looks like they're going to be revamping the way that the top bar on the UI looks. Now, granted, this is all work in progress, so it's not set in stone. But it does look like they are going to try and shore up the amount of options. They've already done this a lot. In fact, there's 2 different menu title bars, whether you're in the game or out of the game. If you go to the game on the front end and you actually go into the title bars, you can actually see a lot more, like your pinned reputations, I believe, are still on the front end of the UI. But if you go into the game, the pinned reputations are taken out, and it just shows you the actual reputation pages. It no longer shows you like the season / reputations and then the 3 pinned ones that you could have. It's odd. They really, I'm glad that they're going in to do some of these UI changes, because the UI has been changed frequently and there's not parity across all parts of the game, and that is always bothered me. The UX has always bugged me when they do stuff like that with Sea of Thieves. So one of the things that they did actually go into with the season pass changes is that at the end of the season pass, they're going to have what they're going to refer to as a star item. And I think this is fine. I don't really have an issue with it. They did kind of announce what the upcoming one for season 20 was going to be. If you haven't seen it yet, it's going to be interesting to describe, but I'm trying to think of there was a game that actually had like weapons, and you could pick up the weapons, and one of them was just a skull. Oh my gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Hold on. Zelda Breath of the Wild. Okay, so anyone that's played Zelda Breath of the Wild, if you kill any of the Stalfos, or no, not Stalfos, what are they called? Like the stall goblins, they have like arms at night that are animated because they're undead arms, right? But they're just skeleton arms. It's just like a bicep or whatever that arm bone is called, and then like your forearm, and then the hand, right? And it's animated. And the star item for this one is going to be just like that, but instead of it being like a bocoblin's arm from Breath of the Wild, it's going to be a skeleton's arm with the hand and an accoutrement that's akin to a gold hoarder. It might actually be the gold hoarders. I actually don't know. I didn't notice anything right off the bat that was going to be like, hey, this is the gold hoarder's arm. Although it makes sense considering the number of times we've exploded him and the fact that his head is now still stuck on the top of a staff that's used to open the portal between the Sea of the Damned and the Sea of Thieves. So I guess it could be the gold hoarder's actual hand, which would be interesting. The fun thing about it though is obviously this is a sword, right? This is them putting a skeleton arm as a sword, which puts us one step closer to them giving us a giant fish to use as a way to smack people with. That would then be a sword. So we're getting there. We're getting closer. But it actually, I don't know what the term is that people use to describe this. But when you finger roll a coin, up and down your knuckles. It's a fun little thing that you can do. And honestly was probably the thing that helped a lot of folks that had ADHD back in like the 80s and 70s and stuff that didn't know that was a thing before we had diagnosed that. And they would kind of fidget before fidget spinners were a thing, right? They would fidget with a coin back when real currency was something that you had on you all the time. And they would flip a quarter up and along their knuckles, which is completely lost on a younger generation that doesn't deal with currency in the same way. But it is very much something that was a thing. And it was interesting to see that as like the star item. And you know, kind of realizing my own mortality during the span of this podcast and realizing how much is just lost on generations that never had to bother dealing with a pocket of change. I am now realizing how old I am. God, I'm so old, and I'm not even that old. But I'm still old. Anyway, so the star item, definitely a callback to the Gold Hoarder. Definitely cool that they're doing a sword out of a skeleton arm. That very much reminds me now of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. The fact that it rolls a coin along its knuckles is hilarious, because it's such an antiquated thing nowadays that would never happen in today's society with kids. But there you have it. And they plan on doing this for the future of seasons, where they have like a star item. And this isn't too unlike some of the what is it? I would say like character based cosmetics. Obviously they've had stuff like the Pirate Lord's jacket, Briggsy's hat, Briggsy's jacket, Stitcher Jim's jacket. They've had who else is Belle's jacket, Belle's hat. They've had stuff that has been earned through adventures. They've had stuff that's been earned through tall tales and limited time events. But the Pirate Emporium has not really had that until most recently, with the Black Witch and a couple other references to stuff that's technically in game, but also technically referenced as older content that Rare as a studio has produced in the past. And in this instant, it feels like they are taking some of those items that were typically in the season pass as like the $50 and $100 point or 100 level items, and using those as like the star reward. It's going to be associated with big named characters in the world and things that tie to them lore wise directly, like the mysterious strangers, or Wanda's, Amaranta's mask, stuff like that. You know, like things like that are probably going to be queued up as the future of star items for the season pass. And given that there's going to be one star item, the things that they are looking to use as what would originally have been like the special 50 and 100 tier item is now going to be the star item. So again, it's going to be very interesting to see how they balance cosmetic rewards for stuff that's in the pass compared to how long it takes to actually complete the pass, compared to what gets then brought to the actual in-game shops. Because I'm willing to bet that the way they're going about it is going to add more stuff to the gold shops. The irony here is that they're working hard to fix up the way the user experience or the UX experience is for the Pirate Emporium, and as well as like the actual season pass. We have not, and here's one of the things that they didn't address that has been a long-standing request, is a way for our pirates to have a better user experience when it comes to cosmetics, period. You are almost hurt by buying cosmetics in the game, especially when it comes to weapons, because weapons are one of the few things that you switch out the most when it comes to playing this game. And because of that, if you've purchased every single weapon skin and, you know, something happens in season 3 that causes you to buy a blunderbuss skin, and then come to find out there's something in season, you know, in year 6 that's something that you like better. If you've only purchased 2 blunderbuss skins, then when you go to switch out your blunderbuss, boom, you have sailor blunderbuss and then those 2, and that's it. Whereas if you've bought everything, if you have something that isn't on the first page, you are really asking yourself, how much time do I do I spend going for this specific cosmetic that I like amongst the pages and pages of cosmetics just to be able to switch efficiently to the weapon that I need in the middle of combat? And that's tough because you're trying to base your engagement off of expediency of reaction time to be able to win, because reaction time is everything when it comes to winning. And the alternative here is how long do I spend digging around in my weapon chest to find the weapon skin that I love because I want to use that in combat, because why else did I collect it if I didn't want to use it in combat, versus how much time am I going to spend going for it? And that's where I think at the very least, we currently have ways to break out every cosmetic based on the type of cosmetic that it is. You have all, which just shows all of your cosmetics. And then we have individual classes of cosmetic. You know, you've got your blunderbuss skins on your blunderbuss tab. You got your Eye of Reach on your Eye of Reach tab. You could I'm not going to say easy, but there is an opportunity for Rare to get an easy win here and say that to the left of the all tab, there is a favorite tab. And that is something that if you've gone to the specific cosmetics that you like and you want to have one or two of each type added as a favorite, it's a system that's already in place. They use it for the captaincy stuff. So you can pin effectively the cosmetics that you want for your ship in through the actual ship chest. And that way, every time you log into the game, you automatically have your ship with those cosmetics on it. So when I look at that and then I look at what's going on with the actual cosmetics, I'm saying, hey, have a favorite tab. Have a tab that I can go in and click on the X number of items that are my favorites, and allow me, when I go into a chest for cosmetics, to just quickly tab left over from the all tab to my favorites tab, and then select the cosmetic for the item that I want to actually use during that time. And then it puts the onus on the player. Are you going to add a whole bunch of favorites and clog that up, as opposed to one or two of a specific type of item that you know you're going to switch between on a regular cadence? And if they want, they can start with the weapon chest, just have it built into that functionality, and then expand that over to the other types of cosmetics like clothing, vanity, equipment, stuff like that. If you really, really want to go out there with the user experience, what you could do is actually have all of the tabs still represented in their standard way, but add a star or favorite system, whether it's a heart or a star, or whatever iconography you want to put on it, and allow you to go into each individual tab. And in that tab, go through all of the different pages and select the ones that you want to favorite. What then happens is it plucks that favorited item out of order from where it is amongst the pages and drops it on the first page before everything else. So if you have 3 hats, and those 3 hats are your favorite hats, but you have bought every single hat in the game, but the 3 hats that you love are on pages 8, 12, and 17, you could go in and favorite those 3 hats. Then when you go to the hat tab on the first page, you have those 3 hats at the top, very left section of the cosmetics. It then takes all of the other ones and shifts them down 3 spots. So you have your favorite 3 hats on that tab at the very first page, at the very top, on the very left side of that page that you can then select. If you don't want to select those, you still have all of the pages of all of the other hats that you've collected over the years that are available to you. Having that type of a system would alleviate the need to add a search bar, because everyone knows what everything's called, and a search bar would definitely make it easier to go type in on a controller what it is that you want to get, because a lot of people that play the game that want a search bar tend to forget there are people that play with controller. Controller texting is not fun. It is not fun. I don't know anyone who loves using pirate text to open up their keyboard on their console and go bleep, 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 bloop, 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 bleep, bleep. And then that's literally them moving left and right around the ASCII keyboard to type in the couple letters and hope that the predictive text understands what the word they're trying to type out is and presents that to them for them to go bloop, bloop, bloop up 3 steps to get to that predictive text to then do it. Meanwhile, everyone's like, add a search bar so I can type it in on my mouse and keyboard that I use to type everything else, because this is the interface that I use for both typing and combat. So let's think about more universal solutions instead of ones that sound good on paper, are not good in experience. Just to kind of close out, actually, before I jump off the season pass topic, one of the things that I believe it was Mike Chapman had addressed was saying that they were going to be removing filler and that all the rewards are seen as desirable by players. And this was, kind of in reference to them talking about how in certain tiers, I don't think it's every tier, but in certain tiers, they are going to offer the end reward for that tier being a cosmetic for an item that is in the Pirate Emporium. And that tentatively for now, they are showing that it's going to be one of 3 items that you can choose from. There's no indication that you can re-roll these. There's no indication that it's going to take into account stuff that you've already purchased. And it's not, and there's nothing that's taking into account if you have all 3 items, what the alternative would be, which I'm going to be honest, if that's the case, they need to figure out what the average cost of each item being represented is. And if the player owns those, then they are awarded ancient coins representative of the average of those items, so that they are at least compensated for having already supported the game by getting ancient coin in lieu of what would normally be a Pirate Emporium cosmetic. So there's a lot of questions that come up when they start saying, we're going to put Pirate Emporium cosmetics into the season pass that people can then earn without having to buy them in the Pirate Emporium. But if I've already purchased those, what is the recourse for players then? Are they just out? Is there anything that they get? Do they get an IOU for the next time a Pirate Emporium thing hits the store and they're like, hey, here's your IOU, pick something out of this new set. And there you go. You get a credit towards one item of representative cost towards something in there. And hopefully whatever we put into the Emporium in the next years of the game's lifespan is something that you actually want. These are questions that need to have answers. Because if they aren't thinking about it now and it's coming for season 20, that is a problem. That is a big problem. People are going to get angry about that. So hopefully they've had these talks. Hopefully they've had these discussions. And I know that a lot of the Sea of Thieves partners tend to have like direct access to the developers through their partner direct kind of Discord server. I don't have that access. This is my access. So Rare, if you're listening, please start letting us know that you've had these conversations so that we understand that there are safety nets in place for people who have bought the stuff that is going to be represented from the Pirate Emporium in the season pass. Because otherwise, I can tell you right now, not many people are going to buy stuff from the Pirate Emporium because they might get it in the season pass. And if that's the case, then they're probably going to just say, all right, well, it might show up in the season pass, it might not, but I'm not going to buy it, and then end up not getting anything because it was the only thing available in the Pirate Emporium that I hadn't already bought. So I'm probably going to wait till the end of the season before I buy anything, just to see if there's anything that I get from the season pass that I was going to buy anyway. And that's not good. That is not a good way to try and incentivize players to spend money in your store. When you have this looming, you may already have this, you may not. You may get something if you already have this, you may not. So yeah, first kind of introduction of the changes to the season pass definitely leaves a lot more questions than I think answers. So yeah, we're gonna have to see about that. Little Concernicus about this, Concernicus Aurelius on this one. So the last thing that we just need to cover here is custom Cs, and that is really just kind of pertaining to something that they've been doing for quite a while. We know a lot about what is expected as far as like just the toggles, things that you guys will want to use. Effectively, you're going to be able to control pretty much every aspect of the game that you would want to. I think some of the interesting things that we've learned from the actual community direct is this is going to be the headline feature for season 20, and that with the upcoming Xbox showcase, where we typically see them doing something to kind of like announce what's coming down the line for Sea of Thieves in one of their little sizzle trailers. It's going to be custom Cs. And if anyone looking at the Xbox showcase, it's going to be going on, I believe, on June 7th, to have something that's going to be a little bit more grander, I would hold off on that. I would temper expectations. Anything that might pertain to Grand Maritime Union, Flameheart, the Ancients, the Kraken, stuff like that, I would say that is probably further down the line, as everything that was talked about in this podcast was very immediate, soon, or stuff planned just for season 20, which is going to be kind of the main PR driving point for the Xbox showcase. So as far as I'm concerned, season 20 with custom Cs being the headliner is all that you should really expect out of this, and not to get any hopes up for anything too major to be announced in the next couple of months. With that being said, what we did find out about this is that the custom servers are not going to be a paid feature. And the way that it was addressed in the video, I want to take from the positive person's perspective and say that I see why they decided they wanted to make this something that was going to be available to everyone. If you want to take a more, what is it? Cynical? Yeah. A more cynical approach. You can definitely look at this and say they knew that the people buying into custom servers or custom Cs was not going to justify the continued development that it was going to be to continue investing in that, and that there was not going to really be much use case for players outside of communities and people that have like things that they specifically want to do or already have planned for something like custom Cs. I think that there's a very much an opportunity where some people will go into custom Cs and they will spawn a bunch of chests or a bunch of kegs or a bunch of bosses, watch things explode, make a ship fly around the world themselves, try and take one or two photos, and then that's it. That will probably be their experience with custom Cs, and they will not really invest a whole lot of time or effort. There are probably going to be some groups out there that want to kind of spawn a bunch of ships and put them all together and then go jumping around from each of them, fighting each other, which I think is, it's a good use case in general too. But the custom Cs is from my perspective, very much a gift to the community for them looking to create content for themselves. It sets the game up for a very good use case after the lifespan of the game ends, as players will be able to go in and build whatever they want as far as like settings and environments to basically create content or have longevity to the game that doesn't rely on the developers to have to go in and actually continue building in content for the game as far as like a live service game. So end of life when this just kind of goes on on standby mode, custom Caesar is going to be a really good tool for players who want to create their own stuff within it. We've seen this a lot with custom style games with modes like Fortnite, where you can basically go in and build whatever you want. Minecraft had it. World of Warcraft or Warcraft 3 back in the day had it. A lot of use cases from giving the effectively developer tools in a very UI positive experience to the community for Sea of Thieves is a good thing. And one of the things that they addressed with this is that they're going to have presets available for folks that aren't quite sure, that want to go in and actually like build out stuff on their own, to be able to say like, hey, we know that there are going to be competitive people out there, especially for like TDM or team deathmatch, that just want to fight each other. We have a preset set up for competitive pirates. We have a creative sandbox as a preset as well. There's an adventure one if players want to have like adventure in their own custom seas, as a preset that they'll be able to do. There's also a create your own. There's also a completely one that's just designed around being a social one as well too. Some of the things that they did talk about that was kind of cool as well too is being able to turn on things like scoreboarding, and being able to award silver, which was the currency used in Arena, to allow players to be able to earn silver and get like rankings and stuff as they play in this whatever specific mode that you've created for that. So folks looking to get a TDM experience that has like scoreboards for tournaments, things like that. A lot of those tools are going to be built in from the get-go and then expanded upon down the line. When, we don't know, but that's something that they've talked about wanting to be able to do. And they've also talked about legendary locations. And some of these legendary locations are things that are technically in the game file, which, funny enough, I was actually looking at the game file the other day and I realized that Sea of Thieves' game file is roughly about 130 gigs, which is more than World of Warcraft. Now, I'm just talking about like the retail experience for World of Warcraft, but boy howdy, I did not expect the game that's been out since 2004 and effectively working on 22 years of existing as a live game to be smaller than the 8-year-old Sea of Thieves. I was not expecting that. So that was kind of surprising, but there's going to be legendary locations. They've already announced 5 of these, I believe. Sea Dog's Tavern that you can go into, the Sea of the Damned version of the Sea Dog's Tavern, Tribute Peak, which is Shores of Gold, and Old Sailor's Isle, which is the Maiden Voyage Island, which I really like because Maiden Voyage is by far one of those like Huckleberry Finn Treasure Island kind of islands where you it's just rich with little details about something that has been built up over time that you don't see too often in Sea of Thieves. Like in Sea of Thieves, we have some areas that are like traps. We have some areas that have been like obviously inhabited. And there's, like structures that have been reduced to rubble effectively, but we really don't have anything that's kind of like a Peter Pan's Hollow Tree kind of experience. I would say like the Reaper's Lair is one of those kind of like things that has secrets nestled within it, or the cavern ways in Mermaid Isle or K9, those little tidbits of something special that's kind of been built up within this island beyond just the island itself, right? So nice to kind of see stuff like that. I would love for them to expand those legendary locations to include locations within the Tall Tales. Speaking specifically to things like a Pirate's Life, I would love to have like the town available to be able to do like machinima with. I would love to be able to change the time of day or the green setting of that town to be able to like have it look interesting or have it look lived in, so you could kind of have like a Port Tortuga machinima if you really want to do something like that. Also would love to have the swamp location to be able to have access to that, as having like your own version of the Louisiana Bayou kind of a tall tale down in like, oh, we've got pirates kind of coming into the Delta down in the Gulf of Mexico kind of thing. during an era where piracy and whatnot was just kind of stretching beyond the bounds of Nassau and whatnot in the Caribbean. So things like that I think would be fun. I think it would be interesting to kind of see what people decide to do with that. And I don't necessarily think that them keeping it behind a paywall was going to be a lucrative opportunity for them. It definitely would have garnered some interest. But overall, I don't know that they would necessarily be able to justify the investment to development and still be able to charge what they want as like a monthly subscription. That is this is very dangerous blade to be stepping out onto to make sure that you don't get cut there. Because I think if you're going to charge money for something, then there's going to have to be some expectation of delivery and performance. And them releasing this as free content for everyone kind of alleviates them of that responsibility. They can put it out into the world like any content that they've done in the past and let that live as long as it needs to justify the efforts and return on investment that it's getting. And then a lot of that's going to come down to the community too. But like I mentioned a long time ago with the See His Shots stuff, I would prefer that there be some sort of considerations to that. But now with it being free, this is now going to open up the opportunity for players to be able to create really awesome looking photos without having to necessarily deal with the fact that it's going to have to be on like Safer Seas or on a custom server, which means all the people that have been using creators or partners or people that had access to private servers to be able to get those photos are now going to have to deal with the leveled play field of custom seas. And I would hope that now that we're going to have access to custom seas, that the SOT shots start to change how they operate and really kind of take into consideration the frequency of wins that they are awarding players, because right now it is rather disappointing to see that a select few of people out there have been slowly just kind of gathering every single SOT shot collection to get their 10th win, which completely negates the hundreds of people that have been consistently submitting over the years and never gotten an opportunity because they don't have the access or the resources that other people do. So hopefully custom seas will help out with that. And I would encourage anyone that has, the creativity in their mind to come up with those shots, to utilize custom seas to be able to do that. Unfortunately, outside of using things like Discord, there aren't too many avenues for players to really gather other pirates to be able to do something in custom seas, to be able to recreate that image that they had in their mind of that very elaborate thing that they want to do for the sake of an SOT shot. So they're still kind of hamstrung in that sense. So that was effectively everything with the community direct that is going to be addressing the next 6 months of Sea of Thieves. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of the stuff that was talked about was stuff that's been hinted at in the past, or stuff that is directly related to how things are processing in the world right now with Sea of Thieves and the seasons. To kind of summarize what I got as far as impressions go, they have definitely done some things that are positive, but I think that the positives that they're doing are masked by the changes that are coming down the line with stuff like Season Pass and the Emporium. I see what they're looking to do. They are looking to change the way seasons are approached. And instead of having content driven with each season, they are looking to have events pop up with the season to give you something to do that's going to be, cycling in and out of different things. And then as you engage with those, you earn currency to then go and purchase cosmetics during that event to be able to get access to stuff that you normally wouldn't be able to. I still have a lot of questions. There's a lot of things that I think would be nice to know about some of this stuff, just to kind of ease my mind that Rare is still doing large scale production. It's been hinted at obviously with like the orb streams, with stuff that they've talked about wanting to do, how long it's going to take definitely seems like it's going to be something that we don't talk about or hear more about until we get the next community direct. And to think that what we have for the next 6 months is effectively going to be the Bilge Rat Weekenders, the Last Ship Standing, and then custom seas with some more Bilge Rat Weekender stuff, it's going to be tough. It is definitely going to test the community as far as how players are engaging with the core loop of the game, and if that's something that is still compelling enough for them, if there's enough for them to do in the meantime until more story comes out, until more content that drives the changing aspect of the world forward. I will be very interested to kind of see how that plays out, because I still think that there are a lot of stories that every time it feels like Rare is getting kicked up with something. And we'll take season 18 as a perfect example of this. And to be perfectly honest, it really was the fact that they don't have enough people working on seasons to ensure that the content is getting done soon enough to be able to test and implement any kind of changes or bug fixes, so that what ends up happening is they either have to delay it, or it comes in so hot that it's burning and it's full of issues that arrive that they know have to get fixed, but won't be able to get fixed by the time they want to launch it. And as a result, you get story that is being introduced in season 18. And because the delivery mechanics the delivery process that they've decided upon back in season 17 isn't working, we aren't going to see story until after season 20. Now, they could pick it back up, but to have 2 seasons where the story isn't pushed forward is reminiscent of when we had that 7-month season right before Legend of Monkey Island Tall Tales came out. And granted, Legend of Monkey Island Tall Tales came out, but they had to kill the plot line between Tasha and Briggsy and the weird changes of revitalization that was happening to the wilds in those little pocket space kind of continuums. And because of that, we lost a lot of narrative thread that had already been woven into the world. And we got was a very lackluster fix to that in the form of dialogue hidden away in the pirate tavern. And I don't want that again. I don't think that's a strong way to deliver narrative. And I see that there's a balance that has to come with enriching the sandbox for players that don't care about the narrative, and then enriching the world with the narrative to drive the sandbox forward because of changes that have happened due to narrative. It's 50% here, 50% there that they have to balance. And I wish that there was a way for them to work out the 25% balance for each season. But with that being said, again, I would much rather the story-based content, the stuff that's going to drive the sandbox, drive the world forward with change or introductions of new things, to be ready when it's ready, and not come in with the sense of this is something that we need to get in because we're losing our player base to other games. And time is the biggest commodity that Rare has to gamble with when it comes to Sea of Thieves. If they spend too much time working on content that is driving the game forward effectively, then they are going to lose players to stagnation. Whereas if they shortcut themselves too often and they change the scope of the game, like they did with season 17, like they did with season 18, what they've done with season 19, then you run into that scenario where the content does come, but because of time constraints, because of cutting the scope of what they're going to plan to do with the game, like, I mean, look at Wild Seas. We were supposed to get a 3rd meg, and that 3rd Megalodon never got pushed out in future patches. It just got killed and never talked about, never even introduced. And that's because they were so driven towards, this is the content that we're working on for this season. With them effectively removing that and living on live events and Bilge Rat Weekenders and stuff like that for each season, you pull the story away from seasons, which is fine. You can have seasons without storyline, but you still need to have story in some instances. Like you can't have a world that's living and breathing and bringing discussions around the NPCs to try and like drive narrative. You can't start that and then just stop. It's like not printing the last half of a book and you get to page 243 and you're looking at the other page on the other side of the book and it's just completely blank. And it is most definitely not one of those choose your own adventures where you got to go back. It is very much there's not a last half of this book. And then come to find out, a year later down the line, there's a reprint and the second edition took care of the fact that the rest of the book wasn't printed on the first edition. Now the first edition is going to be remembered, but you really wanted that second edition that had the entire story. So I hope that if they're going to be doing story, which I know they're going to, and they plan on doing it sooner as much as they can rather than later, I hope that they take their time to make sure that the gameplay aspects of it are well tested in the same way that they did with A Pirate's Life, which still had scope reduced on it, but was effectively solid outside of a couple scenarios, but we didn't know that was coming. So they really couldn't test everything. But there were definitely issues, but they fixed them. But I hope that they're able to do that in a way that compels players to trust again that they can make content that is solid, that is engaging, and has something for everyone in the form of story driving the gameplay forward, which opens up tools to the sandbox to be able to enjoy new ways of playing and driving your own adventure. But looking at the community direct, I will say that they did the right thing with the things that they talked about. It just is a bummer that a lot of stuff that they talked about was not necessarily the stuff that people wanted to hear. And I think a lot of people were really looking forward to hearing more about the Kraken, about the Orb, about the Grand Maritime Union, the stuff that they've got planned for the smugglers and the bilge rats, all of that kind of left unsaid. And I genuinely think because a lot of that is just because it's not ready and they don't want to talk about that because it's easier to focus on the stuff that they know is deliverable within the next 6 months and leave everything else for the following community direct, which will hopefully be a lot more focused on how they've been able to take the time that they need to be able to get this content right, that people have already tested it within insiders and that things are looking positive and that they're hoping for a very solid launch with that content in September and heck, even tie it to Talk Like a Pirate Day, season 19 or season 22, season 21, kicking off in September 19th, 2026 with a brand new set of story that's going to be coming in on a monthly cadence in different episodes that you can then take a look at and enjoy in bringing in new tools and ways to play kind of thing, create your own kind of story. All right, pirates, that's going to do it for this episode of the Keelhauled podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this recounting of the community direct and my thoughts around it as far as what they said and what they didn't say. With that, I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves, taking into consideration what Rare's trying to do and give them a little bit of slack, knowing that they are trying, even if they continue to say we missed the mark. Hopefully they find out where the target is so they can start hitting that mark. But pirates, that's going to do it for this podcast. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, always feel free to leave me a message either on Patreon, on the YouTube notes, or not comment, on the YouTube comments, or in the Discord. I always read them and appreciate that you guys are contributing to said algorithms, because that's honestly a lot better than any amount of time I spend putting in tags or crafting titles or descriptions or timestamps, any of that stuff. Most of that stuff can help, but truly engagement with the content is the thing that surfaces it more to other people. And that is a tough thing, and it's a big ask on me to you. So I appreciate when I do see it, because I know that you guys are enjoying the conversation and have your own opinions about it as well too, which is always cool to hear. And it's always cool. We don't necessarily have to agree on it, but I'm glad that you have an opinion one way or the other on it as well. So Pirates, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, definitely make sure to take a look at the socials. If you guys are not sure what's going on there, you can always reach out to me via email, the old school way. And I don't do physical mail. I've actually had really bad experiences with physical mail in the form of paper cuts, which is a thing. So with that, Pirates, thank you. I love you. And I look forward to sailing with you on the Sea of Thieves.